going to be reading out of Luke 15, and I'm going to start us off with verses 1 and 2, just for a minute, to kind of set the stage. So it says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him." That's Jesus. "But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" So some people may be muttering about you right now because you're here. That's okay. Take it on the chin. So what an interesting setting we have. You've got Jesus. We'll talk a little bit more in a bit about him in a bit. We've got these people called the Pharisees, and then we've got the rest of humanity, which is, the Jews of the time who are like the common people and who are the sinners, okay? And so you say to yourself, wow, how does something like this come about? What's the Jewish mindset here? What is God stepping into? And so you got to go back, and we won't read the whole Bible today, but in a nutshell, you start off in Genesis, and very quickly you can see where seeds of all of this is coming, okay? God creates Adam and Eve, and he has a super intimate relationship with them. I mean, they walk together in the garden in the cool of the evening, and every day. And Adam and Eve have a pretty incredible life. They've got this whole garden to live in. It's just spectacular, and it's all meant to foster a relationship between them and God and between each other. And then here's this situation, though, where God, who creates this garden, he puts this tree right in the middle of it. And it's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, if you're God and you command, don't eat of that tree, where would you put that tree? In a corner somewhere, right? Those of us who are parents in here, we know. In fact, we have a story in the Boyd family that's infamous. Some of you have probably heard it. But Audrey, our oldest daughter, when she was 14 months, I think was the fateful age, she was exploring, and we had a very small apartment, and it was very bare because childproofed, except for one floral arrangement, just kind of like this one right here. And she was kind of looking at it. She knew that was the one thing she wasn't supposed to touch, but she's over there. Dad happens to be sitting at the table over there watching her, and she did this. No, Dad, no. No, Audrey. No joke. Oh. Absolutely true story. So anyway, I think we're getting the point that as a parent, we understand we're trying to teach here. You have to trust me. This is our relationship. You have to understand I love you. I'm looking out for you, and that is completely the setup in the Garden of Eden. Yeah, in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, anyway, of course, we know what happens in the story. They stop trusting God. They trust their own thinking, and they end up eating, and hence the rest of humanity. We all have the same thing in us. We really do. And it's not like God didn't know that. And in fact, if you read over there, he already is kind of, he's telling the end of the story. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to win you back. It's basically what God says. So this is, in fact, what goes on. God has always been about relationship. There's never been a question. It's never been about, here's my do's and don'ts. In fact, that was the greatest criticism you could give God. He said, my rules are not, it's not rules, do, undo. That's not what this is about. So he was always, in fact, he picked some of the less likely people to be like the main, headlines in the whole story. Abraham, okay, he's pretty amazing. I mean, he had a lot of faith, but he had mistakes too. Like, anybody know some of his mistakes?
Yeah.
Like, he lied, not once, but twice in the same way. And he brought horror onto Pharaoh's household in the process. Jacob, he grasped his brother's heel as he was being born, which is what Jacob means, which figuratively means he's a liar and a deceiver. That's what his name means. And so, but basically God didn't care about that. And then he did cheat his brother out of his birthright. He did. But you know what? God didn't care about that because he cared, this young man, about his birthright to lead the family. It meant something to him. And God saw that. What other people? David. Anybody know anything David might have done? Okay. He's king now. God's completely given him victory. He's like literally so in charge and so at ease. He's resting at his house and he's looking and he sees a beautiful woman bathing. So, okay, he calls for her, he sleeps with her. Okay, that's bad enough, right? She gets pregnant. Okay. Well, what are you going to do about that now, David? Well, it happens to be the wife of one of his most loyal fighting men. And what's he do? He got killed in battle. Look, David had some issues. But thank God for David, because the point is to show us who God is. Yeah. God is not this mean, and he's close to the brokenhearted. He's close to the downtrodden, the people that a lot of times we want to fight for today even. But he's there for all of us, because all of us are spiritually downtrodden. All of us are, whether we know it or not. And there's Ruth. She was a Moabite woman, which wasn't even in the Jewish line, but she ends up being in the lineage of Jesus. Yeah. And then you've got Rahab, who was a prostitute, but she's held up in the scriptures because of her faith. She believed God. So, okay, there's generations that should know this stuff, but just like today, people were not in the Word. And so even little Jewish kids weren't learning what was in the scrolls. They weren't hearing it. And there was a lot of false stuff going on. They've been, around a lot of false religion, which religion is always about trying to do the do's, okay? It's about the do of the do's. It's not about relationship. And so, and that's more comfortable for us, because we are performance-oriented. It seems a little easier, and we can control that. So it's no surprise that by the time you get to this point, this is the misunderstanding that's going on. That God, He doesn't want these people, and we're the good people. And what's the matter with you, Jesus? If you're really the Son of God character that you think you are, you ought to know that too, right? I mean, that's their attitude. It's amazing to me how hypocritical they were, and they didn't even realize it. They're down on these people who are responding to God. Anyway, go figure. But we can do the same thing. So that's the setting, the platform by which now Jesus gets inserted into the picture. And he is poised. It's like God's drawn his bow and ready to release his arrow of insight and truth about who he really is through the message of his son here. And these are three beautiful parables, and we're not going to read all of them. We're just going to read the third one. So here we go. Starting in verse 11. It says, Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to the servants, 'Quick! Bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, 'What's going on?' 'Your brother has come home,' they replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back, safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" Okay. Pretty powerful story, right? Hard to do it justice in the next 12 minutes, but I think the key is, let's think who's who, right? Who's who? Primary interpretation, you have got Jesus trying to show the nation's leadership. You're the older son, and these lost people around you are the younger brother who's run off, and God's the father. So that's like primary interpretation. But then you throw into it that basically if you're a Gentile, you're part of that, you're lost, you're, sinner, and, God doesn't want you either. You're the younger son too. And, but then he even brings it down, I think, for the rest of eternity, for us even right now. I think all of us have younger son or older son going on inside of us. We can even have both, which I have in my life. What's going on with the younger son? Well, he's unaware of how good life is with his father, right? And so he's like, I want to get out of here. I'm ready to go do what I want to do. I get life. You don't get it, Dad. And I'm going to leave. The older son, he also is unaware of how good life is. Did you catch it? I've been slaving for you. And your orders, it's just intense. Both are completely ungrateful. Anybody have kids? Do they not sound like teenagers? And so, completely ungrateful. So, I'm going to, what I want to do is just show us 3 quick points of how this parable really shows God's love. Okay? So the first point is that all that we have is given by God to us lovingly and with the intention to make life fulfilling. Okay? So he wants to do it. You look at the kids in the story, they both got stuff. I mean, the younger son did get all that money that was supposed to go to him. He got it. But it's bigger than that. In our lives, our life itself, the opportunities that we have, even just the free will aspect of it, like back in the garden, why would God do that? We already said he wants us to trust him, but there's more than to it. He actually wants us not only to trust him, but to actually, love him. It's not just this required relationship. This is something that's born of a passion inside, that we begin to understand him. We begin to understand his truth more. We begin to see things differently than we would by nature see them. Like the younger son, he sees by nature, well, I want to go do what everybody else is doing. They look like they're having fun. You hear that from your kids? But it's amazing how God, he's satisfied with the idea that I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to give you my word. I'm going to give you some examples of relationships with me, because I really want you to choose this. So it's exciting. And what's crazy is behind it all, and then this is true about the older son too, bad attitude kid too. Oh yeah, he's home, but begrudgingly. He's out in the field working. He didn't even notice his brother, walking in. So I think that the idea is it's not going to be used well, but it's still given.
Yes.
It's still given. You have been given by God who you are. And I think that we just don't know how to be grateful for that sometimes. In fact, I can think of many reasons why it's easy to be ungrateful and to miss the point, right? One is that, so much of life is if the grass is greener syndrome. We always look at something better than us, or we don't have that and they do. And we do not easily see the things we have. Anybody used to like Cheryl Crow? Okay, remember that line in that one song? I think it's something in the sun or whatever. Let's see if I can quote it. It just came to me. It's not getting what you want, it's wanting what you got.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's that whole thing inside of us that's also part of our nature. That that's what happened to Adam and Eve. Oh, it's better if I eat that tree because I'll know good and evil. And then it was tough. Yeah, they did. But then they lost that ability to just be naked and unashamed. I think also too, and this is a hard thing, and that's why I brought this book with me. I think we have damage that happens to us. I mean, life. You may think, God's really done great for me. You should have grown up with me. You should have been through what I went through. And I do know some of your stories, actually. And they were much harder than what I went through. But I want you to know that God has put some amazing people on this planet who've been through tough things, including in the Bible and also outside of the Bible, who are able to share about how that can actually help you see through life better and help you see the frailty of human beings and to make you more aware and actually have greater emotional intelligence rather than less. And this is a really great book. It's called Grace Calls. It's by Robin Widener, and it's about spiritual recovery after abandonment, addiction, or abuse. Very well written, and I'm about that way through it. And at first, I'm not somebody who went through abandonment, addiction, or abuse. I'm not. My mom was bipolar, so I guess somebody might say that I never felt like it was. So when I started reading this book, I thought, well, I don't really know how it applies to me, and I was a little stuck after chapter 2. But once I realized, wait a minute, I want you to hear this, ladies. We are assaulted every day. We are abused every day, not by the man, no, by the evil spiritual forces in this world who want to tell you that you are something or this or other that you should have been, but you're not. And so therefore, true love or true peace or or whatever is not for you to have. It's really everybody else. Oh, and if you, by the way, believe in God, well, he forgot you, so why even bother to believe in him? It's so real. And I see it in advertising, I see it everywhere, but somebody might call me a conspiratist, but that's okay. Because there really is one. And anyway, so the second point, God allows hard times to be in everyone's life so that we can see ourselves and him better. So what was the trouble for the younger son? It wasn't the famine. It was the wild living. And what's wild living? It's what I did in my 20s. Basically just, honestly, I really did just throw off all concern about tomorrow and just did what I wanted to do. And I hurt people, I lied, I stole, I had sex, I just did a lot of stuff. I really did. And I can honestly testify to you, I've had to say this to my own children, and I'm saying it to you. If you haven't lived like that, you're not missing anything. Nothing. There's nothing out there. You're really looking for loyalty, true love, friendship, eternity, things that matter, having purpose. And so that was the real trouble for him. And it really sets you up for the fall. It sets you up for famine. But we'll get to that in a split second. Because our relationships are built on the wrong foundation. And also, we get our self-worth by feeding our cravings. And have you ever noticed how it's impossible to consistently complete satisfaction of the craving? And in fact, you end up having to go for more. So it's really hard. It's a hard life. And anyway, we also find ourselves then getting into things that are not good, that are unfulfilling. We end up settling. And that's what you see. Just a word on pigs. They're a poor maligned animal right now in the story. They are cheap because and easy to raise because they will eat anything, which is partly why they were very loved by the Romans, because you could feed a lot of people, a lot of Roman soldiers. But they were also eating dirty stuff, like they eat waste and excrement, and they only eat that. And so, carcasses and things. So anyway, that's why they were associated with disease, and I don't know why God said this. Maybe he was testing them, maybe he knew about disease that he didn't want them to get, but he told the people, don't eat them, please. They are not to be eaten. Anyway, but that's why when you have this Jewish boy now, going to feed the pigs, this is as low as it gets for him. You know what I mean? With his upbringing. I'm sorry, but I ended up in places I didn't want to end up in. And I don't know about you, but it's pretty awful then when you're there. So, anyway, what's really cool is the famine is our friend. Because the famine ends up showing us our real problems. That I have been building my life on the wrong platform here, and I really need to make a change. And that's what you see happen in his brain. His whole worldview changes. Hey, in my dad's world, people aren't starving right now. I don't know about you, but I used to look at some people and go, why are they happy? I don't get it. How does that happen? So, famine was good for him. Keep going. What was the trouble for the older son? Well, he also had a complacent ingratitude, right? But his, and the word complacent, because he didn't really take the action to change things. He actually just adapted, and he kind of just did what he was supposed to do, but it wasn't out of any great understanding of what he was living among. And so he ends up, he's living his life for himself. That's what he's doing. Hey, it's pretty good with my father. I got food every day, and okay. But it's all about him on the inside. So That's why I just have to say a word about prosperity Christianity is so wrong, guys.
Come on.
God is not in this business of, hey, I just want to bless your life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pitiful. It's embarrassing. And because that's not who he is at all. He's such a glorious being.
Yes.
And, anyway, can't mock God. The Bible says that. You may mock him, but it's not you, let me tell you. But anyway, the whole idea is that he gets his famine. What's that? His brother comes home. And thank you, God, that he comes home, because then he gets to realize who he is. That I couldn't have cared less about you.
Right.
And it's been about me. And that is not who the Father is at all. And so, it just makes me think about how it's really dangerous stuff for us when all we're doing is thinking about myself, guys.
It's true.
If we're calling ourselves Christians, because that is not what this story says to be. In fact, we really should be leading the way in this world of people who are trying to make a difference in any way we can to better things for people. But not just a social gospel, not just, because again, the Bible talks about our enemy is not flesh and blood, but it is the rulers and powers and authorities in the heavenly realms, the dark spiritual forces of evil. And so, we are also to care about people spiritually. And, look, nobody's trying to God does not make anybody do anything. So we shouldn't either. I mean, people don't want us here, okay, fine, you don't want to hear. But if, what's wrong with bringing it up? Find out. What's wrong with, hey, I'm just going to be your friend because I want to make life happy for you. I think that we can't underestimate just the fact that you care about somebody else, what a difference it makes. And that is what God wants. He always wanted Israel to be that light to the rest of the world. He never intended just saving the Jews. He always wanted the whole world. But now he's working on us individual by individual. Because we get to hear Jesus like this. The last point, God is eager to forgive and restore.